All right, welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. Horace, what's up, man?
Nothing much. What's up with you?
It's good. It's good. How's everything going? How's business?
Business is good.
How real estate sales?
Real estate sales are good. I know we were talking about this earlier today, but I think sales had dropped in Ontario at least from March to now by 25%. I think each month they'd be dropping like 8% or something like that, anywhere between 11 to 8% since March. Usually it's the opposite. Usually from March to now you'd have a huge or significant increase because this is prime time. But now I feel like after the government kind of opened up everything, the open houses started kind of happening. People started getting used to more buying. I think August is going to be a busy month. Okay. Numbers are still not done yet, but like from what I see right now, what's today? We're 2-3 weeks in.
Yeah, two and a half, almost 2.5 weeks into August.
It's been busy. It's been busy.
Nice. The funny thing about real estate, though, like you said, they were dropping right as the economy opened. Why is that? Seems like if the economy is reopening, real estate sales would pick up, but I guess it is.
No. I mean, the economy opened. And it didn't pick up right away.
Oh, okay.
What was going on was like there was a downward trajectory, right? But I feel like when it opened up, that's when like I guess the realtors are out there trying to sell. It takes some time to get people comfortable in selling the home.
Yeah.
Other people to buy the home, and then the open houses started. And people started actually exchanging. Actually, what I saw was in March you didn't have there was pretty much bidding wars, which kind of there was no people were buying firm. There was no conditions, and now recently we did see a few houses where people had gone back and forth a couple times before they bought anything. And there was conditions, there was negotiations on prices. What ended up happening was there's like basically two different ways realtors are selling a home. During a bidding war, when they know that it's a seller's market, and this is just pricing strategy that I'm talking about. We'll get to the podcast in a minute.
Yeah.
So what they do is though, like let's say they know that the house next door sold for $800,000 last year. Maybe this house is worth $850,000, $875,000. They're going to price that house at $600,000. They don't want to give any information to anyone if it's a seller's market because they want to make sure that people come in and they'll be like, just give us a highest offer. You keep them blind of the seller's expectations and to try to bid up the price. That's when there's sellers, there's too many buyers for any one house. But when it's a buyer's market, right, and there's a lot more sellers, what sellers do is that same house that's probably worth $875,000, they're going to list at $925,000 to try to pull the price up as much as they can, right? So they're trying to, like, somebody's going to come in, negotiate, going back and forth, and hopefully settle for $875,000. So what I saw happen in the last month and a half was everybody's kind of confused. Some people are on the bidding kind of boat that we're still going to have a bidding frenzy as soon as the market opens. They're trying to price it low so people just bid at the house. Other people are trying to pull up the price. So there was just a discrepancy that everybody in the market, the realtors, I would assume, the ones who are listing it, are not on the same page in terms of where the market's going.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Dynamics of the real estate market, always fascinating. Always interesting. Very cool. All right, so today's topic for the podcast is reading versus doing. And this is an issue that I've struggled with personally. I wanted to answer the following questions in this podcast. Number one, in between reading versus doing, which one is more important? Number two, why do people get caught up in just reading and avoid doing execution? Number three, what's your favorite way to learn? We'll ask each other that question. And number four, is reading important? All right, Harris? So number one, between reading and doing, which one is more important if you just had to pick one?
Yeah, so I think we've kind of talked about this before too. For me, that's not an easy question to answer. And again, it's like for a lot of people, the obvious answer would be doing. And for me, it's more like in order for somebody to do, they need to have an imagination and they need to be able to read to create that imagination, see what other people's arguments are before they kind of step into the doing, right? For me, it's a lot of people like that reading portion helps you build that context, that imagination to figure out, to plan what you're going to do afterwards. And we kind of, again, like underestimate the faculty of the imagination. I think there's a lot of people who can't imagine, right? Like a lot of people who may be working or doing whatever, and they feel like, they can't imagine themselves starting a business or doing anything else.
Yeah.
So that's one of, like, for me, it's if I had to pick which one, I'd always say it starts with reading a little bit. I lean more towards reading.
Reading, yeah. Okay. Interesting to hear your perspective. Yeah, for me, I think I'm always guilty of reading too much. And now, as I've sort of progressed through my career and life, I focus more on just doing and execution. Yeah. I tend to find that's the best way for me to learn as well. For me, between reading and doing, reading tends to be very passive for me, while doing is very active. I tend to retain knowledge and information much better when I'm doing something as opposed to just reading. So I think for me, doing is better, but I'm not discounting reading. As you know, I do really enjoy reading, and maybe we'll cover some of our favorite books in a podcast. It'd be interesting to go over that. Like, and if you look at guys like Bill Gates, for example, like he locks himself up in a cabin for an entire week, and he's reading, and his reading style is very active. He takes notes as he's reading. He disagrees with the author in the margins. It's a very active way of reading. So not to discount reading for sure, but I tend to find for myself doing is better.
So I mean, I've always known you as an avid reader. You've recommended some of the best books I've read. So, but my question is, has the reading helped you frame your doing?
Yes. I'm not going to deny that it has. Or it's like given me perspective on something for sure.
Does it give you encouragement to do something?
It does. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm looking for inspiration and motivation, reading does help. And the thing about reading is you learn through someone else's mistakes. And then you sort of apply those lessons in your life. Your life is never going to be the same as someone else's life, but you can take some of those lessons and those mistakes and sort of implement those lessons in your life to try to make better decisions. Of course. So interesting thoughts there. Why do you think, question number 2, why do you think people get caught up in reading versus doing? And maybe I can answer this question because I was guilty of this. Like when I first started my career, I used to be, like you said, very big advocate of just reading, increasing your knowledge, make sure you understand what people have to say, get different perspectives on it. I think people get caught up, though, in reading simply because it's the easier thing to do versus actually doing stuff. Like we said before in some podcasts, I think we covered this in a previous podcast as well. People avoid execution because it's tough. It's hard to do.
No, I feel like that's the one thing that reading, if you're not a good reader, right? Like, okay, I guess if it's between poor reading and just doing without reading, I'd rather just do. And what's poor and good reading, there's a difference because like with reading, the reason why people get caught up in it is because you open up a book, okay, nobody's arguing with you how you understand it. Whether you understand it correctly or incorrectly, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to be there to tell you that you understood the book. It's up to you and what you put into it, right?
That's true.
Now, if you just want to passively read and not really like kind of engage with the material and try to figure out, is there something that you're thinking wrong, right, to kind of improve yourself, which is not how most people read. Most people read, at least in my opinion, to be like, hey, listen, I want more facts to tell people when I meet up with them, right? And so they'll just try to memorize those facts, and it's not really digested. It's not really processed. They don't really change anything. They automatically assume that when they're reading something, they understand the other guy's perspective. Like the biggest issue I've seen is people read something, and because they can frame it some way, somehow, and they feel like they understand it, they think that is what was meant. They fail to see that the author could have meant something completely different, and you're completely off the ball, but you don't understand that because you think that you've understood it to some extent or to some degree or to some element, and so therefore that's it. So that kind of stuff, like that's why people like to read. There's nobody telling them that you're wrong. Now doing, listen, if you right? If you start a business and you do something stupid, it's a real answer right there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You're not going to be making money, period. You tell somebody, right? Like you go and say, okay, you want clients. Go talk to clients, right? I'm the best lawyer, accountant, whatever it is out there, right? And you say, hey, here's my services, and everybody says get lost, right? You could tell yourself, hey, listen, like, well, they're stupid,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the reality is you did something wrong, right? And you have to improve that to make sure that you get in. And so there's a truth there, and you're forced to reflect and look inside and make those changes.
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot. You said a lot there, a lot to unpack. No, for sure. It's great advice. I think, yeah. Answering this question as well, why do people get caught up in reading versus doing? I'd say the different perspective I've taken on this question as well now is, it's that quote I've sort of developed as well. Instead of reading the news, try and make the news. Try and build your story as well, and your life and your path, as opposed to reading someone else's path and then using that to form your own. Take some of the lessons, some of the insights, and apply it to your life. But I think you should make whatever path it is that you're on, try to make that interesting and valuable. Such that, I don't know, eventually someone is like, yeah, I should document Horace's life because it's freaking amazing. Someone needs to take some lessons from it. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I
Because you become known and you become notable and you make an impact by actually doing stuff as opposed to just reading.
Yeah.
Reading is nice. It adds context and it provides lessons and you can learn from other people's mistakes. But you add real value and leave a legacy in life by doing stuff, not by just reading.
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know if I agree in that if, like, instead of reading the news, making the news, but you shouldn't make the news to make the news.
No, of course. Yes. Yeah, no.
Because there's a lot of people who are doing that now.
Who want to make the news just because they want to make the news.
Yeah. Whether it's real or it's not, it's a different story, right? You want to, like, at the end of the day, live a fulfilled life where you're active. You look back and you don't say, hey, listen, I wish I did that.
Yeah.
There's no regrets.
Yeah.
And I don't mean YOLO. I'm not a YOLO type of person.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a person where it's like, okay, if you want to start a business, if you want to do something, if you want to learn something, you want to learn photography, whatever it is, right? Go out and do it, right? And people who are active learners know that overnight they're not going to become a master. You just have to take the first step. What's that first step? You got to figure out what that first step is and just take it. Right. And so then slowly, that is what I would say is building character and all that stuff. And then eventually, you may not make the news, but you make the news as in, that looking back, you don't have any regrets. You did what you could. You gave it all you've got. And the thing about failure is, it's better. When I look back and I say, oh, I failed at this, if I've given it all I've got, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? What else could I have done? I gave it everything, right?
Yeah.
But if it's something where it's like, okay, I took some safe route, and I didn't actually come up, like I didn't lose, but I didn't win either. I'm like, oh man, what if I did it? You know what I mean?
It's like the Jeff Bezos has the same thing. It's like regret minimization framework or something like that. And I think he's whenever he had his story, he said the same thing. Jeff had a pretty good job. He worked at a very prestigious hedge fund, D.E. Shaw in New York. He left everything, moved across the country, and started Amazon. And he was like, the reason why I did that was because if I asked myself, if I was 80 and didn't take this chance, would I regret it? And he said, yes, I would regret it. So that's why he took the chance. And look where he is now.
Yeah.
So interesting that happens. The other thing about why do people get caught up in reading versus doing, I do think in today's day and age, the amount of information that is just thrown at you, it's a lot of information. Yeah. There is a newsletter for everything. You could sign up.
Podcast for everything.
The podcast for everything. There is a newsletter for everything, a podcast for everything. You could, technically speaking, sit there and read everything, and it would take you the better part of an entire day to just get through all the newsletters, all the content, all the information, all the threads on Twitter, all the It's insane. Yeah. It's insane. There's so much information because of the digital age. It's so easy to create content. Yeah. Anybody who's got an opinion can publish something on Medium or whatever the hell it is and have an influence and have an audience. It's kind of nuts. Yeah. And then you, as a listener or as a consumer of that content, you're left to fend for yourself and, you're supposed to like triage that content and be like, this is good, this is stupid, I don't agree with this, blah 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 blah. It's become intense.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%, and then that goes back to people aren't really taught. This is back to schooling. We had the podcast on this too, I think.
Yeah.
But like people aren't really taught how to process things. They're only taught how to acquire, like reading, acquire information. And when you're taught that, then you think all that information out there is worth something. When in reality, there's probably 3 or 4 good books out there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all you need. It's all you need to get started. Everything else is whatever. Right. Once you understand a few good books, right, like you've understand most of it. Every other book is probably recycling the same concept in different ways, right? And you move from there. Now, as you start, I'm saying to prep you for doing, right?
Yeah.
But as you're doing, you always have to have like other stuff that you're reading, like good books that are very conceptual based, and that I feel is not everybody's game. Right?
Yeah.
There's very few people, and I think this is I'm really stealing from a Jordan Peterson lecture, right? And he's controversial, but
it's very controversial. He is, yeah.
But hey, listen, you take wisdom wherever you find it. But he said, there's just very few people who are hyper intellectuals who can discuss or have a desire to acquire a high-level understanding of abstract ideas, right? Because there's a lot of imagination, there's a lot of faculties that are involved.
Yeah.
So he's like, there's not everybody's going to want to do that. And to say that everybody's imaginative is wrong. There's very few people who want to kind of really go push themselves further. And that's like, you know what? Everybody's made differently. But I think that to some degree, everybody can. You don't have to create the next Amazon. Right.
Yeah.
You can create a very successful business in your community that's helping out everybody. There's no reason why you wouldn't. Right. So.
No, it's true. It's true. Question number 3. I did have a personal anecdote for this one, and number 3 was, what's your favorite way to learn? I think for me, favorite way to learn is definitely by doing. I think we've said that in the first question as well. And I'll take like something quite personal to me. Like, I'm into photography. Yeah. Like when I picked it up couple of years ago, in 2020 I took it up seriously, but before that I always used to like read online about photography and just what settings I need to do to have to take a particular picture. And in photography, 3 things are important: ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. Basically 3 things. And I used to be like, okay, so to take this long exposure picture I need these settings. Okay, let me write it down, or let me take notes, whatever. But then taking all those notes and stuff, that doesn't help you in the real world. Like, just because you know what the setting is to take a particular picture doesn't mean you'll actually be able to go ahead in the real world and actually take that picture. Because when you're there, the environment is different, the light is different, people are moving differently, so you're going to get a completely different result. And you need to adjust in real time and just figure it out as you're doing it.
Yeah, but I feel like even though I agree with that, but I feel like also if you're basketball is a good analogy. Not that I'm like a crazy player or anything, but I mean in the beginning, before you play any game, you're gonna have to learn how to dribble. Yeah, you're gonna have to learn how to make a 3-pointer. You're gonna have to make how you're gonna do a 2-pointer, right? How you're gonna do a layup, right? And at that point, you're just really trying to focus in on that movement and be like, okay, I need to take 2 steps, jump, and toss, whatever it is, or put my hands here, jump, toss, whatever. Yeah. But when you start playing, it's going to be a different game. You know what I mean? Then it's like, okay, there's people, there's movements. Now you have to be creative, and but you still need to start off with those fundamentals, right? So that's what I mean. Like with reading, like it's just that if you just stay there and you refuse to kind of use that in the real world, that's a problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, you need to know, like, at least if you start taking pictures, you don't know what ISO. I don't know what an ISO or an aperture, whatever it is. Right? Like, if I just start taking pictures, it's gonna be kind of like crazy. Yeah, you're gonna be like, this guy's an idiot, right? But if I have some kind of context behind it, right, and try my best to learn, it's like a process, right? Then you go do it, but that thing really helped you, but you realize it's useless at the same time, right? Then you do it, and then you're like, wait, okay, now I'm going to go back and learn. So it's going back and forth. It's like a ping pong.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. If I'm struggling with like a picture, I'll go online and try to read about how someone has taken it so that I can like sort of adjust my settings accordingly. It's absolutely true. But I don't know, man. When it comes for me, in terms of my favorite way to learn, it's like I'd rather just dive into the deep end and just like figure it out. I don't know. Because I tend to find I will naturally like deviate to reading eventually about the topic. So I usually try to be like, okay, let me just figure it out. And then when I'm struggling, I'll go read up about it and then, get the information I need to troubleshoot whatever it is I'm struggling with. Because let's take another example. Like to become CEO, is there a book that can teach you how to become a CEO or like to run a business?
No, 100%. No, there isn't.
There isn't one. Yeah. And I feel like those lessons are usually best learned when you actually just do whatever it is that you need to do. And then you make mistakes along the way, but those are the biggest lessons and the biggest.
But I feel like becoming a CEO, it's like saying, does somebody teach you how to become Michael Jordan, right? Like you can't, right? No. But like when you're starting off in any company, you learn first how to just do the work, show up 9 to 5 and make some Excel sheets, right? Yeah. Make a nice PowerPoint, whatever the hell it is, right? And then you learn how to make a presentation, right? Then you learn how to like work in a team. And then maybe you're learning how to manage other people. Yeah. Then you're like kind of close to some decision making, but you see how the information below feeds into the decision making above. Maybe you know what I mean? And it's like a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
There's a lot of back and forth. I think with the more complicated stuff, it's not like that there's no books. It's just there's so many different tasks involved that you need to make sure that you're really, really good at. Right? That like you can't write a book on it. It's just experience. Yeah. But those tasks in themselves, you can read up on and do individually. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah. No, it does. Yeah.
So like part of a CEO, you need to read financial statements, but you can't just learn them.
Yeah.
You gotta really read it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like again, I'm a person that's it's a difficult question to answer.
No, and I don't think we're saying that the two are mutually exclusive, right? The two are important for sure, and they're important for both of us. It's just which one do you prioritize first? And I think you're saying more of the reading. I'm saying more of the doing. Yeah. But again, I'm answering in the context.
I say it's more important to read, but I would, for my own case, prioritize doing.
Oh, you would? Okay, so personally, you're the same.
Because personally, I feel like everybody leans towards reading because it's easier. Right? Yeah. And to do something or try something new, it takes a lot of energy. Even if it's not, for me, I'm not going to lie, sometimes it's not about rejection. It's about laziness, man.
It's uncomfortable.
Like, do I want to burn these brain cells to figure this stuff out? Like, it's going to take time. It's going to take energy. I'm going to burn a lot of calories, and I need all the ones I have.
Doing is uncomfortable. Yeah. Reading is a much easier way to do it. And I don't know what it is about reading. You're like, oh, I spent $20 on a book. Now I must know about something. Yeah. No, you don't know anything. You just know it when you actually do it. Yeah. If you don't apply the lessons on those pages into real life, they're just pages.
Yeah, you haven't learned anything.
You haven't learned anything. Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of useless. All right, so last question to sort of wrap up the podcast, and I guess we sort of answered this in a cursory fashion, but I wanted to answer it directly. Is reading important?
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, I'd say the same. It's very important. It's really, really important, but maybe it's not as important as you think, but it is important, right?
I feel like also it depends on your role as well. Okay, I feel like in life, you have more like you should be leaning more into reading earlier on, then into doing, and then you slowly move into more reading again, right? And the way I see that is when you're starting off your career, you have to read to understand whatever it is that you're starting off, right?
Yeah.
You have to have some kind of context. You go to high school, like you go to school, you go wherever, you got to read, figure that out. Then you start doing as you actually do it. Then if you as you become like a CEO and all that stuff, you are now responsible for the vision of the company. You have to read. You have to read incessantly to understand what's happening in the market. You are ahead of a ship, and the ship can't hit anything, and it can't sink. In order for that to happen, you have to develop significant foresight into what's to come, right? So in that part, you do have to do significant amount of reading and trying to understand. But hopefully by the time you get there, you understand how reading and doing work together so that when you're there, you can actually steer the ship correctly.
That makes a lot of sense to me, especially as a CEO or someone that leads an organization. If you're setting the tone, the vision, the mission, and communicating, reading is definitely important for you at that level.
Yeah, but you're doing like reading and doing simultaneously almost.
Yeah,
right? It's like it's the same act, but you gotta make sure that it's interacting and you're actually doing it properly. It's not like you're reading in an isolated fashion or doing it in an isolated fashion. Because if you do that, your organization is going to become stale very quickly.
I know we covered this particular topic when we answered one of these questions, but what are you a big fan of? Do you like books a lot? Do you read a lot of blogs and newsletters? What's your sort of thing? How do you discover topics you're going to be interested in or things to learn or read more about?
So I read, I would say just nowadays I do read just more articles. But I tend to prefer books because I feel like with articles, there's anybody nowadays can put up an article. So are they going to put in the effort? Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Not to say that people don't put in effort, but with books, it's more focused, especially a good book. It's more organized. It's more of a message to the reader. Whereas articles sometimes it's not a message to the reader, but it's more a message to the boss of the writer saying, "Hey, I got an article out." Or
it's an opinion.
So an opinion for an opinion's sake, you don't know the angle. Now, I'm not saying books don't have angles. Books do have angles too, but I find like there's probably less of a chance. It's like movies, right?
Yeah.
Higher chance that you're going to have a higher quality production in a movie theater as opposed to something that's made on YouTube.
No, that's true.
Right?
That's true. Although some YouTube videos are pretty damn good. But yeah.
No, 100%. I'm not saying discounting that either.
The one thing I did want to say, which this occurred to me also later on in my career and life, is just because you're reading something doesn't mean you have to agree with whatever the hell the author is saying, right? Yeah. And remember, when you read something in the newspaper or in an article, etc., first of all, it's given by someone's, it's from someone else's perspective. They also have their own biases and their agenda. So you don't have to take whatever you read or whatever you're reading in a book at face value. You can disagree with it, but you can hear their opinion and just understand where they're coming from. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I would say disagree after you've understood their opinion from where it is.
Yeah.
Right? Empathetically try. Because a lot of people are like, I don't agree with this because they don't like it for one reason. They're like, no. At least put in an effort to understand where they're coming from genuinely with the mindset that you could be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So that you're at least giving it like some good faith effort to kind of you're putting in good faith effort to really give it a chance. Because otherwise you're going to block yourself off to everything.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, so I guess last question for just to close this off. Usually we do takeaways, but I'll ask you this. Any good books you've read recently?
I haven't read a book recently. No. I started, I think, on Grand Strategy, but I haven't finished that yet, so I can't really comment.
Okay, interesting. One of the good books I've read this year was, I think I recommend it to you, is No Rules. It's the book by the founder of Netflix, so Reed Hastings. Just talks about Netflix corporate culture. You know, the whole, they don't have a set vacation. You can take as much time as you want, so they don't have a set vacation policy. Salaries across the organization are fully transparent, so you can completely see what everyone is making, given the role. They encourage a lot of feedback, so it's very much like Ray Dalio's hedge fund. There's a lot of candor. Like, if I don't like something you did, I'll sit down with you. I'll give you feedback, and I'll be like, look, I didn't like the way you do this, or I didn't like the way you presented this, or put this into context, et cetera, et cetera. They give a lot of autonomy and responsibility to their employees as well, in terms of just production, budget decisions, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that was a pretty good book I read this year. Very interesting. Changed my mindset on how organizations work.
Maybe we need to have a podcast on that one.
Yeah, we probably should. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, this episode. We'll see you on the next one.
All right, take care, guys.
Take care.